Before we begin, I want to warn you that this story contains mature themes. It deals with the challenges of new motherhood, family relationships, and infidelity. If these topics make you uncomfortable, you might want to stop watching now. It started so subtly. At first, I didn't think much of it, just harmless glances, or so I thought. But those glances lingered, and over time, they became harder to ignore. He'd look at me like I wasn't his mother. Like he was seeing me as something else. Someone else. And for a long time I pretended not to notice. I mean, what was I supposed to think? He's my son. My son. The idea felt ridiculous, absurd. But once the thought crossed my mind, it never left. It followed me everywhere, in every room of this house. I started catching his eyes on me when I'd walk past. If I turned to him, he'd look away, but only for a second. It was almost like he wanted me to know he was watching. And as much as I tried to brush it off, I couldn't. And here's the part one hate admitting. A part of me didn't mind. Maybe I even liked it. Maybe I liked the attention. God, even saying that makes me feel sick. But it's the truth. After years of feeling invisible, of being overlooked and forgotten, having someone look at me like that. It woke something up inside of me that I thought had died a long time ago. You see, my life hasn't exactly been easy. My marriage to Cade fell apart after 15 years. I spent most of it trying to keep us together. I tried to be everything he needed, everything he wanted. And for a while, I thought I was enough. But then the distance started. First, it was little things, no goodnight kiss, no how was your day. Then it was the silence. That unbearable silence that fills a room and presses down on your chest until you feel like you can't breathe. We stopped fighting, even. It's like we'd both given up. By the end, we were strangers sharing the same house. And when he finally walked out the door for good, I didn't cry. I thought I'd feel relief, maybe even freedom. But all I felt was this emptiness. Like I'd been hollowed out. I wasn't just losing him, I was losing the version of myself I used to be. I didn't know who I was anymore. I wasn't a wife. I wasn't desirable. I wasn't seen. I was just a mom. And even that felt like a role I was barely holding on to. Winston had already left for college by then. He was my only child. My baby. I raised him mostly on my own, you know. Cade was always more focused on his work than on us. But Winston, he was my world. From the moment I held him, I knew my life would never be about me again. It was about him. His needs, his happiness. And when he left for college, I thought, this is it. I did my job. He's off to start his life. But then, a few months ago, he came back home. He didn't tell me much, just that college wasn't working out and he needed some time to figure things out. I didn't push him. I figured he'd talk when he was ready. That's the thing about Winston, he's always been so quiet, so introspective. He keeps everything bottled up until he can't anymore. I thought I knew him. I thought I understood him. But when he came back, something felt different. He wasn't the same boy I sent off to college. There was something darker about him. He seemed restless, frustrated, like he was carrying some weight he couldn't shake. He barely left the house. He'd spend hours in his room or sitting on the couch, staring at his phone, his jaw tight, like he was angry at the world. I tried to reach out to him, to talk to him, but he kept me at arm's length. And then the glances started. At first, I thought maybe it was in my head. I'd catch him looking at me out of the corner of my eye, but I told myself it wasn't what it seemed. He was probably just lost in thought, I thought. But then it kept happening. I'd be cooking dinner, and I'd feel his eyes on my back. I'd turn around, and there he was, just watching me. Not like a son watching his mother. It was different. It felt deliberate. Intense. And it made my stomach twist in a way I didn't want to admit. I should have stopped it then. I should have said something, set some kind of boundary. But I didn't. And I don't know why. Maybe it was because I felt guilty. I mean, he had just lost everything, his future, his confidence. He was trying to figure out who he was, and I didn't want to make things harder for him. Or maybe it was because, deep down, I liked how it made me feel. After years of being invisible, of feeling like I was nothing more than a shadow in my own life, someone was finally seeing me. And it wasn't just anyone. It was him. And that's the part one can't explain. The part one don't want to explain. Because it's wrong. I know it's wrong. But once I felt it, I couldn't unfeel it. And once I saw the way he looked at me, I couldn't unsee it. It was like we were both pretending not to notice what was happening. And the more we pretended, the closer it got to becoming real. I still don't know how it all went so far. How we crossed that line. But what I do know is this, after everything that's happened, nothing is the same anymore. Not with Winston. Not with me. Not in this house. And no matter how much I want to take it back, no matter how much I want to fix it, I don't know if I can. If you're still with me, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories like this. Trust me, there's so much more to uncover. There were times I caught him looking, not in the way a son looks at his mother. And the more it happened, the harder it became to pretend I didn't notice. It wasn't just a glance here or there anymore, it was something else. Intentional. Focused. And every time it happened, it left me with this strange, unsettled feeling. I should have set boundaries. I should have. But part of me didn't. Maybe I didn't want to. Maybe I liked the attention. You have to understand, it had been so long since anyone looked at me that way. Years. Kate stopped looking at me like that long before our marriage ended. And once it did, I convinced myself that part of my life was over. That feeling, that spark, it wasn't something I was ever going to feel again. And then Winston started looking at me, and it was like I didn't know what to do with it. It was wrong. I knew it was wrong. But it was also intoxicating. There was one afternoon, bright, sunny, warm. I was out in the garden, pulling weeds, watering plants, just trying to keep myself busy. The yard is my little escape, you know? A place where I don't have to think so much. I was kneeling by the roses when I felt it. That feeling you get when someone's watching you. I glanced up, and there he was, standing in the living room by the window, just staring. He didn't even look away when I saw him. He just stood there, his hands in his pockets, like he wanted me to notice. And I did. God help me, I did. I felt this rush of heat, shame, confusion, something else I don't even want to name. I turned away and tried to focus on what I was doing, but I couldn't shake it. His eyes were on me. I could feel them even when I wasn't looking. And instead of telling him to stop, instead of walking inside and saying something, I stayed there. I stayed there and let it happen. That wasn't the only time. It happened over and over, in so many little ways. I'd be reading a book on the couch, and I'd glance up to find him watching me. Just sitting there, silent, with this unreadable expression on his face. Or I'd be cooking in the kitchen, stirring a pot on the stove, and I'd feel it, that same weight, that same tension. I'd turn around, and there he was, leaning against the doorway, his arms crossed like he didn't have a care in the world. But his eyes said something else. They said everything he couldn't say out loud. And me? I just kept pretending not to notice. Or maybe I wasn't pretending. Maybe I just didn't know how to handle it. Because the truth is, every time it happened, it stirred something in me I didn't want to admit. Something I didn't even know was still there. You see, I wasn't just dealing with Winston. I was dealing with myself. With everything I'd lost, everything I thought I'd buried. My marriage to Cade, it wasn't just a failure. It was a wound that never really healed. We used to be happy once. I can still remember the way he used to look at me when we first met, like I was the only thing that mattered in the world. He used to touch me like I was something fragile, something he was afraid to lose. But somewhere along the way, all of that disappeared. I disappeared. I'd sit across from him at the dinner table, and he wouldn't even see me anymore. I could be wearing a new dress, doing my hair differently, trying anything to get him to notice, but he never did. He'd just stare at his phone or talk about work or nothing. And every time he didn't look at me, every time he didn't touch me, it felt like I was fading. Like I was becoming invisible. By the end, it didn't even hurt anymore. It was just empty. And now here I was, years later, and suddenly someone did notice me. Someone did see me. And it wasn't just anyone, it was Winston. My son. And I hated myself for letting it affect me the way it did. But I couldn't help it. I didn't know how to stop it. It wasn't just the looks, though. It was the little moments. The way he'd hover close to me when I was doing something around the house, offering to help with things he never cared about before. Like the door. One evening, the lock on the back door got stuck. I was fiddling with it, trying to fix it myself, when he walked up behind me. I didn't even hear him coming. He just appeared out of nowhere and said, "Here, let me do it." He was standing so close I could feel his breath on my neck. His hand brushed against mine when he reached for the screwdriver, and for a second, I froze. I didn't move. I didn't pull away. And neither did he. He was close, too close. I knew I should have stepped back, but I didn't. And in that moment, I realized, he wouldn't step back either. We didn't say anything. He fixed the lock, handed me the screwdriver, and walked away like nothing had happened. But something had happened. I don't even know what to call it, but it was there. And once it was there, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The tension in this house, it was like a thread pulled so tight it was ready to snap. Every interaction felt loaded, like we were walking this invisible line, pretending it wasn't there. But it was. And every day, it got harder and harder to pretend. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't want to know. But deep down, I think I already knew. And the thought terrified me. That night, it still haunts me. It was late, close to midnight, when I got home. My shift had run long, and I was completely drained. My feet ached, my head was pounding, and all I wanted was to crawl into bed and forget the day. The house was dark when I walked in, and for some reason, that darkness felt heavier than usual. It wasn't the comforting silence I was used to. No, it was different. The air felt off. Like something wasn't right. I remember setting my keys down on the counter and heading to my room, barely awake. But as I got closer, I heard something. It wasn't loud, but it was there. A faint sound, soft, rhythmic. I froze. My first thought was that maybe I'd left a window open and the wind was brushing the curtains. But it wasn't that. No, this sound was different. It was coming from inside my room. My heart started pounding. My body was telling me to turn around, to leave, to not open that door. But I couldn't stop myself. My hand was shaking as I reached for the doorknob, and when I pushed it open, I'll never forget what I saw. Winston was there. My son. Sitting on the edge of my bed, his back to me. And even though I couldn't see his face, I knew what he was doing. I didn't need to see to understand. His movements made it perfectly clear. For a moment, I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring at him, my breath caught in my chest. My brain was screaming at me to say something, to yell, to do anything. But I couldn't. I was frozen. It was like my body didn't know how to react. And then, he turned around. The look on his face, it's burned into my memory. Shock. Shame. Fear. His eyes were wide, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to explain himself, but couldn't find the words. He looked at me like a child caught stealing, like he wanted to disappear, to undo whatever had just happened. But it was too late. I'd seen him. There was no undoing it now. "Mom," he started, but he couldn't finish. His voice broke, and he dropped his hands to his sides, like a kid caught doing something they knew they shouldn't. He couldn't even look me in the eye. And me? I didn't say anything either. I couldn't. I was too stunned, too overwhelmed by what I'd just walked into. I don't even remember what I said. I think I managed to whisper his name, Winston. Maybe I asked him what he was doing. Or maybe I didn't say anything at all. I honestly can't recall. All I remember is the weight of the moment. The silence between us. And the way my stomach twisted into knots as the realization of what was happening sank in. And here's the worst part. The part one can barely admit to myself. In that moment, standing there in the doorway, I didn't feel just shock or anger or disgust. I felt something else, something I didn't want to name. Something I couldn't name. It was buried beneath all the other emotions, but it was there. And it terrified me. I think I nodded. Or maybe I just turned around and left. I don't know. But the next thing I knew, I was walking down the hall, my hands shaking, my breath coming in short gasps like I couldn't get enough air. My chest was so tight I thought I might pass out. But I didn't stop. I kept walking until I was in my room, and then I shut the door and leaned against it like I was trying to block out what had just happened. I sat on the edge of my bed for what felt like hours, just staring at the floor, trying to make sense of it. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. That look of shame, of fear, of guilt. And every time I saw it, I felt like I was failing him all over again. Like somehow, this was my fault. I kept asking myself, what did I do wrong? How did we get here? How did I let this happen? But deep down, I already knew the answers. I just didn't want to face them. I didn't want to face the fact that I'd seen this coming, that I'd let it build and fester because I was too afraid to stop it. Because some part of me didn't want to stop it. By the time the clock struck 2 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't sit there alone with my thoughts, with my guilt, with my shame. I needed to talk to him. I needed to understand. So I got up, walked down the hall, and knocked on his door. For a moment, I hoped he wouldn't answer. I hoped he'd pretend to be asleep so I could walk away and pretend like none of this had happened. But then the door creaked open, and there he was, standing in the doorway. He wouldn't look at me. His head was down, his shoulders slumped like he was bracing himself for the worst. And in a way, I think he was. I stepped inside and sat down on the edge of his bed, leaving just enough space between us to keep it from feeling too intimate. I didn't say anything at first. Neither did he. We just sat there in the dark, the silence pressing down on us like a weight we couldn't escape. Finally, I said, "Talk to me." My voice came out softer than I'd intended, almost pleading. "I need to understand." He didn't answer right away. For a long time, he just stared at the floor, his hands clenched into fists, like he was trying to hold himself together. And then, finally, he said, "I don't know what's wrong with me." His voice was shaking. "I know it's messed up. I know it's wrong. But I can't stop thinking about you." I didn't know what to say. What could I say? I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that he needed to stop, that this wasn't normal. But the words wouldn't come. Because the truth was, I didn't want him to stop. And admitting that, even just to myself, made me feel like the worst person in the world. We talked for hours that night. Or maybe we didn't. Maybe it was only a few minutes. I honestly don't remember. I just remember the way he looked at me. Like I was the only person in the world who mattered. And I hated myself for the way it made me feel. For the way it made me want to stay there, even when I knew I should have left. By the time I got up to leave, the sun was starting to rise. The light creeping through the curtains felt like a slap to the face, like the world was reminding me that I couldn't hide from this forever. I walked back to my room and shut the door behind me, and as I lay down in bed, one thought kept running through my head: nothing will ever be the same again. It happened late one night. Of course, it did. Nothing good ever happens in the light of day. The house was quiet again, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, suffocating, like it's daring you to make a noise. I was sitting in the living room, pretending to watch some show on TV, but I couldn't focus. My thoughts kept circling the same thing. Him. Us. What had already been said, what hadn't been said, and everything that was lingering between us, unspoken but so loud it was impossible to ignore. I should have gone to bed. I should have walked away before it got worse. But I didn't. I stayed. And when I heard his footsteps coming down the hall, I didn't get up. I didn't tell him to turn around and go back to his room. I just sat there, my heart pounding, my body tense, waiting for him to walk in. He stopped in the doorway, just standing there, like he was trying to decide if he should come in or not. I could feel his eyes on me, and it was unbearable. But I still didn't look at him. I just stared at the TV, pretending I didn't feel the air in the room change the moment he walked in. I could feel him watching me, and it was like every nerve in my body was on fire. He finally spoke, and his voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Mom," he said, like he was testing the word, testing me. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just sat there, frozen. And then he said it again. "Mom, are you okay?" I turned my head, and when our eyes met, something inside of me cracked. The look on his face. I can't even describe it. It was like he was scared, but also determined. Like he didn't know what he was doing, but he couldn't stop himself. And me? I didn't know what to do either. I just sat there, staring at him, my mind racing, my chest so tight I could barely breathe. He took a step closer, and I didn't stop him. I should have. God knows I should have. But I didn't. I just sat there, waiting to see what he would do. And when he sat down next to me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body, I still didn't move. My hands were trembling, my heart was pounding, but I stayed. I could feel him watching me. I could feel the weight of his gaze, and it was unbearable. I wanted to tell him to leave, to get up and go back to his room and pretend none of this was happening. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because deep down, I didn't want him to leave. And that's the part that kills me. That's the part one can't forgive myself for. He reached out and touched my hand, and I felt my breath hitch. His touch was so light, so hesitant, like he was waiting for me to pull away. But I didn't. I let him hold my hand, and I hated myself for the way it made me feel. The way it made me want more. The way it made me feel alive again. "Mom," he said again, and his voice broke on the word. I turned to him, and the look in his eyes. I'll never forget it. He looked so nervous, so desperate, like he was reaching out for something he didn't know how to find. And instead of stopping him, instead of pulling away, I let him come closer. When it happened, it didn't feel real. It was slow, hesitant, like we were both waiting for the other to stop, to pull back, to say, "This is wrong." But neither of us did. He was so gentle, so careful, like he was afraid of breaking me. And me? I didn't feel like myself. I felt like I was outside of my body, watching something I couldn't control. And even though I knew it was wrong, even though I knew we were crossing a line we could never come back from, I didn't stop it. I didn't want to stop it. There was this moment, right after, where everything felt still. The silence in the room was deafening. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't look at myself. All I could feel was the weight of what we'd done, pressing down on me, suffocating me. I wanted to say something, to break the silence, but the words wouldn't come. I just sat there, staring at the floor, my hands shaking, my chest aching, my mind racing. And him? He didn't say anything either. He just sat there, looking at me, waiting for me to do something, to say something. But I couldn't. I couldn't even look at him. I just sat there, drowning in the guilt, the shame, the confusion, and the terrible, horrible comfort I felt in his presence. Eventually, he got up and left. He didn't say a word. He just walked back to his room and shut the door, and I was alone again. Alone with the silence. Alone with the weight of what we'd done. Alone with the truth I didn't want to face. I stayed on that couch all night, staring at the blank TV screen, replaying everything in my head over and over again. I kept telling myself it was a mistake. That it would never happen again. That it couldn't happen again. But deep down, I knew the truth. I knew that once we crossed that line, there was no going back. The sun was starting to rise when I finally got up. I went to my room, shut the door, and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror. I didn't recognize the person looking back at me. She wasn't me. She couldn't be. And yet, she was. She is. And now, I don't know how to undo what's been done. I don't even know if I want to. Nothing will ever be the same again. Not with Winston. Not with me. Not in this house. And no matter how much I want to take it back, I can't. I can't take any of it back. The next morning, I couldn't even get out of bed at first. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My body ached, but it wasn't the kind of ache you can fix with a good stretch or some painkillers. It was deeper. Heavier. It was like my soul was bruised. I kept replaying everything in my mind, what happened, what we did, what I allowed to happen, and the more I thought about it, the worse I felt. I didn't know how to face him. I didn't know how to face myself. I couldn't even bring myself to look in the mirror because I knew I wouldn't recognize the person staring back at me. I wasn't me anymore. I wasn't the woman I thought I was. I wasn't a good mother. I wasn't a good person. I was something else now, something I didn't have a name for. And the weight of that realization was crushing. But I couldn't stay in bed forever. I forced myself to get up eventually. I walked downstairs, made coffee, and stood by the kitchen window, staring out at the garden. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and the world outside looked so normal. But inside, everything felt broken. I felt broken. I kept telling myself to act normal, to just go about my day like nothing had happened. But I couldn't. Because everything had changed. I had changed. And no matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't undo it. I spent most of the morning avoiding him. I stayed in the kitchen, cleaning things that didn't need to be cleaned, busying my hands to keep my mind from spiraling. I didn't hear him come downstairs, and I didn't try to check on him. I just couldn't. Every time I thought about seeing him, my stomach turned. I felt sick. Disgusted. But not just with him. With myself. Mostly with myself. And in the middle of it all, there were the memories. They kept creeping in, uninvited, like ghosts haunting me. I kept seeing him as a little boy, running through the house with that big, toothy grin on his face, asking me to play with him or help him build his Lego sets. I kept hearing his laugh, that sweet, innocent laugh that used to fill this house with so much warmth. He was my son. He is my son. And now I couldn't even look at him without feeling like I'd ruined everything. Like I'd ruined him. I kept asking myself, how did this happen? How did we get here? But deep down, I already knew the answer. It didn't happen all at once. It was a slow build, a gradual unraveling. And I let it happen. I let those looks linger. I let that tension grow. I didn't stop it when I should have, and now, it's too late. By the time lunch rolled around, the silence in the house was unbearable. I could hear him moving around upstairs, but he didn't come down. He didn't try to talk to me, and I didn't try to talk to him. We were both avoiding each other, circling the same guilt, the same shame, too scared to face it. Too scared to face us. I tried to distract myself, but nothing worked. Not cleaning. Not reading. Not even the mindless daytime TV shows I usually put on in the background. Every little thing reminded me of him. Every sound, every smell, every tiny detail of this house screamed his name, and I couldn't escape it. I couldn't escape him. Or myself. It wasn't until the evening that I finally heard his footsteps on the stairs. My heart stopped when I heard him coming. I wasn't ready to face him. I wasn't ready to face what we'd done. But I couldn't avoid him forever. He walked into the kitchen, his hands stuffed in his pockets, his shoulders hunched like he was trying to make himself smaller. And when he spoke, his voice was so quiet I almost didn't hear him. "Mom," he said, and that one word felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I turned to look at him, and the expression on his face nearly broke me. He looked so lost, so ashamed, so young. He looked like a little boy again, like the same little boy who used to crawl into my lap when he was scared and ask me to hold him. And all I could think about was how far we'd fallen. How far I'd let us fall. He asked if we could talk. His voice was soft, careful, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing. And I wanted to say yes. I wanted to sit him down and tell him everything would be okay, that we'd figure it out, that we'd fix this somehow. But I couldn't. I couldn't even look at him for more than a few seconds. I turned back to the sink and said, "Not now." I hated the way my voice sounded. Cold. Detached. Like I didn't care. But I did care. I cared too much. And that's why I couldn't talk to him. That's why I couldn't face him. Because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to fix this. And the thought that maybe I couldn't fix it was too much to bear. He didn't argue. He didn't push. He just nodded and walked out of the kitchen, his footsteps retreating up the stairs. And as I stood there, alone again, I felt like the worst person in the world. I wanted to run after him. I wanted to tell him I was sorry, that I didn't mean to shut him out, that I was just scared and confused and didn't know what to do. But I didn't. I stayed where I was, staring down at the soapy water in the sink, feeling like I was drowning in my own guilt. The house felt even quieter after that. Even emptier. And all I could think about was how far we'd fallen. How far I'd fallen. He trusted me. He needed me. And I failed him. I failed both of us. And now I don't even know if we can come back from this. I don't even know if we should. That night, as I lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, I kept hearing his voice. "Mom." It echoed in my head over and over again, soft and broken, like a plea for something I couldn't give him. I kept telling myself that things would get better, that we'd find a way to move on. But deep down, I didn't believe it. Deep down, I knew the truth. Things would never be the same again. I thought things would get better with time. I kept telling myself that if we just avoided each other, if we just pretended like nothing had happened, eventually it would fade away. But it didn't. If anything, it got worse. The silence between us was louder than ever. Every room we shared felt like a war zone, with invisible landmines scattered everywhere, waiting for one of us to step on them. The tension was unbearable. It wasn't just us who noticed it. Other people did too. Kate was the first to say something. He stopped by one afternoon to pick up a box of old books he'd left in the garage, and the moment he walked into the house, I could feel him studying me. Watching me. Kate always had this way of reading me, of knowing when something was off. And that day, he didn't even try to hide his concern. "You look tired," he said, leaning against the kitchen counter like he still lived here. I shrugged him off, told him I'd been busy at work. But he didn't buy it. He kept pressing, asking if everything was okay, if something was wrong. And for a split second, I almost told him. I almost let it all out. But then I stopped myself. How could I tell him? How could I look him in the eye and admit what I'd done? I couldn't. So I lied. I smiled and told him everything was fine. And eventually, he stopped asking. But the way he looked at me when he left, I knew he didn't believe me. And then there was Tiana, Winston's girlfriend. She'd been around a lot lately, popping in unannounced, trying to spend more time with him. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured she was just being a doting girlfriend, trying to help him through whatever she thought he was going through. But then I started noticing the way she looked at me. The way her eyes lingered when I walked into a room. She knew something was wrong. Maybe she didn't know exactly what it was, but she could feel it. And that scared me. Because if she kept looking, if she kept digging, eventually she'd figure it out. And if she did, if anyone did. I tried to stay out of her way, to keep my distance whenever she was around. But it didn't matter. I could feel her watching me, feel her suspicion growing with every passing day. And every time I saw her with Winston, every time I saw the way she looked at him, I felt this horrible, ugly twist of jealousy in my stomach. Jealousy. Of his girlfriend. God, what was wrong with me? I thought I was holding it together. I thought I was doing a good job of keeping my distance, of keeping my emotions in check. But then Peyton came over. She's been my best friend for years, and she knows me better than anyone. And the moment she walked into the house, she knew something was wrong. "You've been distant lately," she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table, her arms crossed like she was ready to interrogate me. "Is everything okay?" I wanted to tell her yes. I wanted to lie to her the way I lied to Cade. But when I opened my mouth, no words came out. I just sat there, staring at the cup of tea in my hands, praying she'd drop it. But she didn't. She leaned in closer, her voice soft but insistent. "Elle, talk to me. Whatever it is, you can tell me." I couldn't, though. I couldn't tell her. Because if I did, she'd never look at me the same way again. No one would. So I forced a smile, told her I was just stressed from work, and changed the subject. And just like with Cade, I could tell she didn't believe me. She didn't press me any further that day, but I know she's not letting it go. She'll be back. And when she comes back, I don't know if I'll be able to keep lying to her. But none of that compares to what happened with Winston. It was late, as usual. The house was quiet, and I was sitting in the living room, staring at the dark TV screen, lost in my own thoughts. And then I heard him. His footsteps were soft, hesitant, like he was afraid to wake me up, even though I wasn't asleep. He stopped in the doorway and just stood there for a moment before finally saying, "Mom, can we talk?" I didn't answer at first. I just stared at the blank TV, pretending like I hadn't heard him. But he didn't leave. He stayed there, waiting, until I finally turned to look at him. The expression on his face. I don't even know how to describe it. He looked so torn, so conflicted, like he didn't know whether to step forward or run away. And before I could say anything, he walked into the room and sat down next to me. "I can't keep pretending," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't keep acting like this didn't happen. Like I don't feel the way I feel." I felt my whole body tense. I wanted to tell him to stop, to leave, to go back to his room and never say another word about this again. But I couldn't. I just sat there, frozen, as he kept talking. "I know it's wrong," he said, his voice shaking. "I know we're not supposed to, but I can't help it. I can't stop thinking about you. I can't stop feeling this." I should have stopped him. I should have told him to leave. But I didn't. I just sat there, listening to him pour his heart out, feeling more and more horrified with every word that came out of his mouth. Because the truth is, I felt it too. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't deny it. Not anymore. After that, everything felt like it was spiraling out of control. Tiana started asking questions, her suspicion growing stronger by the day. Peyton kept calling, wanting to check in, wanting to know if I was okay. And Cade started coming around more, offering to help out with the house, trying to be the person he never was when we were married. It was like everyone was circling me, closing in, and I didn't know how much longer I could keep them all at bay. And Winston. God, Winston. He started coming to me more often, trying to talk to me, trying to get me to open up to him the way he was opening up to me. And every time he did, I felt like I was losing a piece of myself. Because the more he talked, the more he confessed, the more I realized just how far we'd fallen. And I didn't know how to climb back up. I didn't even know if I wanted to. The possibility of someone finding out, it's always there. Hanging over me like a shadow, following me everywhere I go. And every day, it gets harder and harder to keep this secret buried. Because secrets like this? They don't stay buried forever. Eventually, they come to light. And when this one does, I don't know if there will be anything left of me to save. I knew what I had to do. The moment it clicked in my mind, it felt like the weight I'd been carrying was somehow heavier and lighter at the same time. I sat in the kitchen that morning, staring at the cup of coffee I couldn't bring myself to drink, and everything inside of me felt like it was breaking. But I couldn't avoid it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending like things would magically fix themselves if we just stayed silent, if we just kept going like this. I knew what I had to do, no matter how much it hurt. It was the only way to protect us both. That same day, I called Cade. I hadn't spoken to him in weeks, and the sound of his voice on the other end of the line felt like a reminder of everything that had led to this point. He sounded surprised to hear from me, maybe even a little suspicious, but I didn't let that stop me. I told him I needed his help, that Winston needed him. I didn't go into detail, I couldn't, but I told him enough. I told him that Winston was struggling, that being here wasn't helping, and that I thought it would be best if he went to live with his dad for a while. Cade didn't argue. He didn't push for answers. He just agreed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. But when it came time to tell Winston, God, I didn't know how I was going to get through it. He came into the living room that evening, like he always did, and the moment he saw me sitting there, he froze. He must have known something was wrong. I could see it in his face, the way his shoulders tensed, the way his eyes darted to mine and then away, like he couldn't decide if he wanted to hear what I had to say or not. Sit down, I said, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. He hesitated, but eventually, he sat across from me, his hands clenched into fists on his lap. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just sat there, staring at him, trying to find the words to say. How do you tell your son, your child, that he can't stay? How do you look him in the eye and say you're sending him away, not because you don't love him, but because you love him too much? You need to go live with your dad, I said finally, and the words felt like glass in my throat. His head snapped up, his eyes wide with confusion, with panic. What? Why? He asked, his voice breaking, and it took everything in me not to break along with him. Because this, I said, gesturing vaguely between us. Because what's happening here isn't right. It isn't good for you. Or for me. He shook his head, his face crumpling like a child's. You're sending me away, he said, his voice trembling. You don't want me here anymore? That's not it, I said, my own voice starting to crack. This isn't about me not wanting you.